We're diving deep into the recent talk by Col Douglas Macgregor about Israel being in really serious trouble in a potential war with
Yeah,
Iran.
absolutely.
It's like he's painting a picture where the balance of power is shifting dramatically in the Middle East.
Right, and it's especially interesting given that there's been a lot of buzz on YouTube lately about this. What do you think is the most alarming part of this message?
Well, for one thing, the interview makes it clear that while the Pentagon is moving more assets to the region, there's this underlying tension. Basically, if the US were to strike Iran directly, they'd face what Iran calls irreparable damage. It
I
sets
get
up a
that.
really dangerous scenario.
Exactly, and then you have these high profile comments from leaders like Trump and Senator Ted Cruz. Trump, for instance, said we have complete and total control of the skies over Iran. That sounds, well, overly confident, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like, claiming full aerial superiority in such a complex air defense environment seems almost like too simple a solution. And then Ted Cruz chimed in with the idea that military strikes on Iran are already underway. It's like a head spinning scenario.
But doesn't that create a sort of cognitive dissonance? I mean, while McGregor insists we're already at war with Iran, you have officials almost downplaying the escalation by proudly stating control over the skies. How do you reconcile these two?
That's a great point. It almost feels like there's a communication gap in the US military and political statements. On one hand, there's this implicit readiness for war, as McGregor suggests, calling it a war where it's not a question of if, but when a direct strike might happen.
Yeah, I see.
On the other, you have leaders trying to manage both deterrence and assurance by saying things like, we control the skies.
Right? And it ties into the overall uncertainty in the region. There's this idea that the US and Israel might be, well, drawn into a conflict with Iran, which could have, as some suggest, global ramifications.
Exactly. It's like a domino effect. The Pentagon's, repositioning military assets, while warnings come thick and fast from Iran, the signals are multiple and sometimes contradictory. It raises critical questions about how prepared we really are for this kind of escalation.
And there's more to it. The interview also hints at the idea that Israel, despite being a key ally, might be in a precarious position if a full-blown conflict erupts. I'm curious about the factors behind that vulnerability.
Right, so McGregor argues that while Israel has traditionally been seen as a regional powerhouse, if the US gets deeply involved, say through direct military intervention against Iran, Israel could find itself caught between two infernos.
Yeah, that's a tough
It's like a
spot.
double-edged sword where strategic dependencies might work against them.
But isn't it a bit oversimplified? I mean, Israel has significant defensive capabilities and strong diplomatic ties. Do you think McGregor really underestimates those factors?
That's a fair critique. I mean, he does present a very stark, almost black and white scenario. Yet, he leans on historical tensions and the current rapid military maneuvers by the Pentagon to build his case. His
Interesting.
narrative serves as both a warning and a call for greater caution on all sides.
Right. And I've noticed that in these kinds of interviews, there's often a mix of political rhetoric and hard military strategy. While his tone is serious, it's delivered with the kind of confidence that makes you stop and think, even if you sometimes wonder if it's all a bit too dramatized.
For sure, it's like if you take his statements at face value, you might feel that a single misstep could set off a chain reaction, leading to, dare I say, a broader conflict.
Yeah,
But
that's
then
scary.
there's always this counterbalance of strategic maneuvers and diplomacy that can, potentially prevent such an outcome.
I mean, the whole interplay of military asset shifts, incendiary rhetoric, and strategic positioning is fascinating. It almost reminds me of a chess game where every move has far-reaching consequences. But is it really that precarious? Or is this alertness partly manufactured?
That's a really good question. I tend to think it's both. On one hand, the shift in military assets is a tangible, observable move. It's not just rhetoric. On the other, the tone of the statements from leaders like Trump and Cruz might be intended more as signals to potential adversaries than as declarations of immediate intent.
True.
So the drama might be as much about deterrence as it is about actual policy.
And then there's the regional reaction. Iran's warnings of irreparable damage if directly struck are, well, pretty intense. It suggests that their military strategy has shifted to a more aggressive posture.
Absolutely. It's like Iran is sending a red line that's meant to backfire any aggressive moves. But at the same time, that very warning adds fuel to the fire, let's say, intensifying the strategic
Yeah, I
standoff.
follow.
It creates this environment where deterrence and provocation are constantly at odds.
And isn't it interesting how all of this is like intertwined with media narratives? This video by Rachel Blevins on YouTube, for instance, really captures the urgency and the layered tensions of the moment. It even touches on the technical aspects like military asset relocations and strategic control, which adds another layer of complexity.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just an isolated incident. There are several other videos and transcripts out there that echo these sentiments. It's almost like a chorus of warnings from multiple voices in the military and political spheres.
Definitely.
Each adds its piece to this really intricate puzzle.
And speaking of puzzles, it's almost like the geopolitical stakes here are multi-faced. It's not simply about the US versus Iran or Israel versus Iran. It's much broader. You have global alliances, shifting loyalties, and strategic interests all playing into this scenario.
Totally. It's like a multi-layered chess match on a global scale. Every move by the US, Israel, or Iran has global repercussions. And Macgregor's statements, although stark, are a reminder that these aren't just isolated military maneuvers. They're signals that might shape future policies and international relations.
Yes, exactly. I can't help but wonder, though. Could the confidence expressed by officials about controlling the skies and executing strikes be, in part, a strategic bluff? You know, something to deter aggressive moves by adversaries?
It could be indeed. I mean, it's like that old military tactic where you exaggerate your strength to ward off enemies, even if you're not 100% sure of every contingency.
I see
But
your
then
point.
again, the stakes here are too high for any bluff to fall short of consequences.
Right, and there's also the issue of internal US debates, you know? Some experts might argue that such statements are overly aggressive and could escalate tensions unnecessarily rather than diffuse them.
Exactly. And that's where the respectful critique comes in.
Right.
I mean, while Macgregor paints this dire picture, others might say that his interpretation could be a bit one-sided, emphasizing the worst-case scenario without fully accounting for diplomatic channels still in play.
And that, I think, is the critical issue. The narrative can easily become polarizing. Some might argue that a proactive stance is necessary given the current military shifts, while others worry about the risks of provoking a conflict that could spiral beyond control.
Precisely. It's a bit like walking a tightrope where each step can lead to a new, unforeseen outcome. And with so many voices, be it military personnel, policymakers, or media commentators, the story becomes layered and contested.
Yeah, it's definitely a delicate balance. And beyond all the military and political theatrics, there's also the human cost and the real-world implications for civilians caught in the crossfire. That adds a whole moral dimension to these discussions.
Absolutely. It brings to mind that while strategic rhetoric and geopolitical maneuvers are fascinating to analyze, at the end of the day, the central concern should be how such conflicts affect people's lives. It's like, if you look at the bigger picture, this isn't just a game of power moves. It's about lives, communities, and the long-term stability of an entire region.
Very true. Yeah, and it makes you wonder, with all this shifting rhetoric and military repositioning, if there's a real pathway to de-escalation or if we're inevitably headed towards something much more catastrophic.
That's the million-dollar question. And even though some might claim that strategic posturing serves as a form of deterrence, the risk of miscalculation is real.
Right,
It becomes a
definitely.
scenario where every decision, every articulated statement could trigger reactions that spiral into a larger conflict.
And, you know, the media plays a huge role in this process too, both in shaping public perception and, at times, potentially influencing policy decisions through the pressure of public opinion.
Exactly. It's an intricate interplay. The narrative crafted in these discussions, like the one by Macgregor, ultimately influences how both policymakers and the public view the conflict. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy if you're not careful.
I get that. So, in wrapping up, Would you say the takeaway here is that we're at a crossroads where words and military moves both have immense power, and the wrong move could tip the balance toward a conflict with global consequences?
Exactly. It's like we're balancing on a knife's edge. The strategic narratives, the physical repositioning of military assets, and the multitude of warnings we're hearing all point to a heightened state of alert. And while diplomacy could still play a role, the aggressive tones warn us that the stakes are incredibly high.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it certainly gives us plenty to chew on. Hopefully, we can see a pathway where tensions de escalate before any irreversible steps are taken. It's a reminder of how complex and dangerous these geopolitical dynamics really are.
Couldn't agree more. This conversation really underscores the importance of nuanced understanding and cautious action in international relations.